At 26, I never thought I'd find myself living under the same roof as my parents, in a house I paid for in full. You might think it's your typical situation of a kid who couldn't afford rent, but that's not the case. I make good money as a software engineer. This house was supposed to be my fresh start, a move closer to my job, and a way to help my parents out after all they'd done for me over the years. Little did I know that in less than a year, I would be forced to kick out not only my parents, but also my older brother and his wife. It all started when I bought a modest three-bedroom house in the city. The house wasn't extravagant, but it was cozy with a nice backyard and enough space for me to work from home. My parents, Liz, 55F, and Tom, 55M, had retired from teaching and were looking for a change of scenery, so I invited them to live with me. They didn't contribute financially. I covered the mortgage, bills, and groceries, but I didn't mind. I had a good job, and it felt good to support them after all they had done for me. I claimed the master bedroom because, well, I paid for the house, and it had a walk-in closet and a private bathroom, which was important to me. The second bedroom became my home office. I work from home about 80% of the time, so I needed a dedicated workspace. The third bedroom was left as a guest room for family visit stuff. For the first few months, things went smoothly. My parents were happy to be in the city, and I enjoyed having them around. They did their own thing while I worked, and I didn't mind footing the bills. After all, they had supported me for years. This was my way of giving back. But then one morning over breakfast, my mom casually mentioned something that made my stomach drop. "Your brother Jake and Emma are thinking of moving to the city," she said. Emma, Jake's wife, was pregnant, and apparently they were struggling. My initial thought was that if they moved, they'd find an apartment nearby. I didn't think much of it at the time. Jake, 28M, and Emma, 26F, had always had a knack for finding themselves in difficult situations, but they usually managed to pull through. A few days later, my mom sat me down again. This time, her tone was more serious. "We invited Jake and Emma to stay with us," she said, her voice sweet and innocent, as if this was a completely reasonable thing to do. My stomach turned. They didn't ask if I was okay with it, they told me. And the worst part? They had already invited them. Before I could even wrap my head around it, Jake and Emma showed up, bags in hand, clearly planning to stay for the long haul. I love my brother, but he's not the most responsible person. He has a way of getting himself into messy situations and relying on others to bail him out. Emma is nice enough, but she carries an air of entitlement that's hard to ignore, like the world should cater to her because she's pregnant. I could already feel the tension building. The first sign that things were going downhill was when Emma made little comments about the house. "This place is so big. It must be hard for you to keep it clean by yourself," she said, looking around as if assessing whether it was good enough for her. "And then, we're going to need a lot of space for the baby stuff when it gets here." At first, I brushed off her comments. But things escalated one evening when Jake and Emma pulled me aside for a talk. I thought maybe they were going to apologize for the extra burden or offer to help out financially. Instead, Emma dropped a bombshell. "We've been thinking," she started, "and it would make more sense if we took the master bedroom." I blinked, sure I had misheard. But then Jake chimed in, "Yeah, the baby's going to need a lot of stuff, and your room has the walk-in closet and the private bathroom. Let me remind you, I bought this house. You paid for everything?" And here they were sitting in my living room, suggesting that I give up my own bedroom for them and their unborn child. The audacity was mind-blowing. I kept my cool. "Why don't you just take the guest room?" I suggested. "It's plenty big." Emma looked at me like I had just suggested something utterly ridiculous. "That room doesn't have a walk-in closet," she said, as if that settled the matter. "The baby's going to need space." That was the last straw. "I'm not giving up my room," I said firmly. "You can have the guest room, or you can find somewhere else to stay." Jake looked surprised, like he couldn't believe I wasn't caving. Emma, on the other hand, was downright offended. That's when I knew this situation was going to get a lot worse before it got better. Over the next few days, Jake and Emma started acting as if they owned the place. Their stuff was everywhere, shoes kicked off by the couch, baby magazines scattered across the dining table. Emma even started talking about where she was going to put the crib, like she had already decided they were staying in the master bedroom. Emma crossed her arms, standing her ground. The guest room is too small. I don't care, I snapped. You're not taking my room. Either move back into the guest room or find somewhere else to live. Jake walked in then, hearing the commotion. What's going on? He asked. What's going on? I said, is that your wife is trying to take my room, and I'm telling you both it's not happening. You can stay in the guest room, or you can leave. Jake looked like he wanted to argue, but I wasn't backing down. I told them they had until the end of the day to move their stuff out of my room, or I'd do it for them. Emma stormed off, slamming the door behind her, while Jake just stood there, fuming. That night, the house was eerily quiet. No one came to my door. No one tried to argue. I had drawn my line, and they finally realized I wasn't messing around. The next morning, I woke up to find the house even quieter than usual. My parents weren't home, and neither were Jake and Emma. I half wondered if they'd packed up and left in the middle of the night. Wishful thinking. I made my coffee and sat at the kitchen table, waiting for something to happen. My mom eventually came home, looking like she hadn't slept. She sat down across from me, avoiding eye contact. Honey, she started, I know things have gotten out of hand. I stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. She sighed. We didn't realize how much pressure we were putting on you. We thought we were helping Jake, but I can see now that we were being unfair. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. You didn't just ignore what I wanted. You sided with him every time. She looked down at her coffee. I know, but Jake, he's never had it easy. And you think I have? I shot back. I bought this house. I pay for everything, and you just assumed I'd let them take whatever they wanted. She nodded, finally understanding. You're right. We should have respected your space. After that, the conversation ended on a quiet note. I could tell my mom was trying to make amends, but I wasn't sure if it would be enough to. That afternoon, Jake showed up, looking ready for a fight. You're really going to kick us out? He spat. You have 24 hours, I replied calmly. If you're not out by tomorrow, I'm calling the police. Jake looked at me like I had betrayed him, but I didn't budge. We're family, he said through gritted teeth. You don't do this to family. Family doesn't take advantage of each other, I replied. You've been freeloading, and I'm done with it. By mid-afternoon, they were gone. I didn't see them leave. I didn't want to. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. After Jake and Emma left, the house was quiet, almost too quiet. My parents and I settled into a new routine. The tension that had filled the house slowly dissipated. They started respecting my space and contributing more around the house. Things weren't perfect, but they were a lot better. Jake sent me a text a few weeks later, apologizing for how everything went down. I didn't reply right away. I needed time to process it. But eventually I did respond, and we agreed to talk when we were both ready. Looking back, I'm glad I stood my ground. It wasn't easy, but I had to learn that respect isn't something you can demand, it's something you earn, even within your own family. And in that moment, I had earned mine.